Recording now. There you go.
Absolutely. Thank you for the kind introduction, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak and to share. I didn't, I've been moving from DC to Chicago over the past few weeks, so I didn't have time to prepare a sermon, but Katerina, generously offered to kind of ask a couple of probing questions for me to think about, beforehand, which I really appreciate. A little bit about me. I come from a kind of mixed heritage background. My mom's Black American, my dad's Iranian. I studied finance at Wake Forest University, came to DC after school, and met up with the church, shortly thereafter, and have been a part of the community ever since. And for me, it's been, a really wonderful way of kind of exploring my own, spiritual, thinkings and evolution, but also being a part of a really, warm community and having opportunities to get involved in DC on matters that really, resonate with me and feed me spiritually. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Thank you, Nikki. And so as a jumping off point, I'd like to mention a few weeks back, Rich preached a sermon on spiritual resilience, and we thought it might be a good opportunity for us to see what our community experiences in terms of living a life of spiritual resilience. So I'm going to ask Nikki a few questions about that and how spiritual resilience really shows up in his own life. But to begin with, Nikki, share in a couple of words, how would you define spiritual resilience for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So it might be more than a couple of words, but in essence, the way that I view spiritual resilience and is actually a new term, for me, but it's one that I think resonates. And I think in a large part for me, it comes down to faith in some sort of higher power and, a trust ultimately that if your intentions are good and you put your best efforts towards something, that either the universe or God will kind of support you on whatever is the best path for you. Not necessarily the path you think you need, but the one that is best fit for you. And there's a quote by Einstein that has always made a really big impression on me. Essentially, he says, the most important question facing humanity is whether the universe is a friendly place. He says, this is the first and most basic question all people must answer for themselves. And the quote stuck with me because, it always seemed to hint that Einstein might have believed that the universe almost had a conscience, which to me, it seemed very odd with kind of the scientific perspective that ultimately, the world is material, and that if we understand the cause and effect and the components of everything, we'll understand how the world works, but not that the universe is benevolent. And so, to answer that question for myself, I think I've been around people who've, my mom who's sitting next to me and my sister and my family who've always had a really strong faith. They're over here. And it's led me not only from having those types of people in my life, but also from my own experiences, that I believe the universe ultimately is friendly and that it does seek to support you and what's best for you. And so that's part of the reason why, I don't have a lot of, background in, the Bible and the various different passages, but these two passages resonated with me for that reason. I think that this idea that the mustard seed, you don't need a lot of faith, but even just a little bit of faith can really have a large impact. And to the story of the leper is that part of part of being in faith and believing that, the world is seeking to support you requires also acknowledging it when it does happen, when something good happens in your life, recognizing that it's not just all on you. And it's, easy to say, but it's oftentimes I've seen my own self in that experience where something good happens to me and I didn't think it was going to happen. And then when it does happen, it's so easy to be like, oh, it happened because I did this. And, I was, there's always a way in hindsight to explain it. But in order to have faith, you also have to acknowledge those situations where you were supported or where things weren't completely out of your control. And that's how you are able to accomplish, tackle the next task or the next thing that comes against you, because it's not all in your control, but that's okay.
Sort of like building your spiritual muscle, it sounds like. Well,
exactly.
Tell us how that shows up for you in your life. Maybe there is one experience that particularly stands out for you where your spiritual resilience was tested.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think this is a great question, but, when thinking about it, like I've been very fortunate in my life. I've come from a really loving family. I've gone to good schools that have given me, great opportunities. I've been really healthy so far in my life. And so I don't think there's one experience that really stands out to me, but it's more of kind of amalgamation of little experiences where I felt that, things were lost, that the odds seemed impossible or whatever. And I had some level of faith and things worked out in ways that I couldn't have imagined. And sometimes exactly what I wanted, and sometimes something else that I didn't know that I wanted, that I really needed. So I have a couple of small examples that I can share. One, and my mom was with me for this one. This was when I was in middle school. And I had been really pressing my mom that, like, I think my sister had gone on a couple of vacations. So I was like, I really, it's time that you and I go on a vacation somewhere. So I convinced her and her friend to go to Puerto Rico and was really looking forward to it for a long time. When we got to the airport, there was an incoming snowstorm. So it ended up being the last flight to Puerto Rico for that weekend. So we already booked everything. And there were around 30 people or so waiting to get on that plane. And, a lot of people were frustrated, some of whom were a little bit rude, but, understandably, maybe during the circumstances. And my mom and I went up to the hostess and, asked what, likelihood of us getting on was. And she gave us the same response she gave everyone, that look, you can see how many people are here. We only have, a few spots left on the plane. It's probably not going to happen. And my mom, and I went back and we sat down and I was disappointed and we just prayed on it and we knew it was out of our control. And, maybe 15 minutes later, a hostess discreetly kind of came up to us and said, hey, this is the last 2 people on the plane, come with me. And it was just one of those moments that you saw all the people who were out there who weren't getting on the plane. And, yes, you could say that, that miracle for us was also, an unfortunate extent, for a lot of other people. But it's those kind of moments where, things are fully out of your control and you just kind of, have trust. You accept what will happen, but you hope for what you hope. Another experience is being in DC and meeting this church, coming to this church. I've shared this story before, but it was at a time in my life where I was really looking to be spiritually fed, but I didn't know how. I'd kind of had negative experiences in some churches before, so that wasn't the outlet that I was looking for. But I had gone on a run and I got a cramp and I saw this really beautiful building that was in front of me. I'd always known that churches typically leave their doors open so that, people can come inside. And so, I wanted to check out the inside, and it just so happened that service had just ended. And, one of the members beckoned me in to have a conversation in the parlor hour, and the rest was history. A more recent time I can think of is, with business school. It wasn't a process that I was sure I wanted to take on, but it was one that, I wanted to explore. And, for the test that I was taking, I wasn't getting the right, scores or to go to the target schools that I wanted. And so I was taking practice tests and wasn't reaching the mark. And on the day that I took the test, I scored a near perfect score. So it's just little things, right? Little things like that are affirming. So those types of experiences.
Thank you, Nikki. And your story kind of makes me wonder, it's not very common for people of our generation to really seek spiritual food, if you will. But I wonder, why do you think it's important to have those spiritual tools available, and how can young people really make it a practice for themselves to use them when there are those small or big challenges that come their way?
Yeah, I mean, I think why is it important? For me, it's been really important because it's allowed me to release a sense of control. I think that's the hardest thing. And I think we've grown up, or at least I felt like I grew up in a society that was very much you can do anything, but you have to make it happen, right? And that's awesome, and that's really inspiring, but it's also can be very crippling if you don't know how to. And this feeling that it's all on you. And I think that having a resilience and a faith in something higher, for me, is eased the burden a little bit. It's eased it in the sense that I know that if I try and I'm open, and open to being spiritually guided, that I have a core belief, right, that things will work out, and maybe again not in the way that I expect, but in a way that will be healthy for me. And I think that's been really informed by people like my mom, who just have really had that unshakable strength and faith. In terms of the tools that I think are helpful, one, faith, right, which is the hardest part, right? There needs to be something that has made you, believe that there's some kind of, that the world is friendly, or that there's a God that's been around, that's, looking out for you. So that's challenging in and of itself. But I think good intentions are really key, right? If we do believe that the world is friendly, then it would make sense that it would reward friendly and good intentions. I think, also being open and looking for signs, I think, is really important, right? When something doesn't go your way, do you take the time to consider, okay, what does that mean? What implications could this have on my life? Maybe there's something that I'm missing, or am I being guided? Looking for signs that, there is a path to be on. Because if you don't look for those things, then it's harder to be led, right? So I think those are kind of the tools that I use, but really, I mean, it ultimately comes down to faith, I think, and looking for signs. So
one of the things that I really took away from our conversations together was the importance of community. And one of the most valuable things, even spiritual tool, if you will, is the community that we have here. My question to you is, how do you think this church community can help support and manifest that spiritual resilience? How can we help one another in a really meaningful way?
Yeah, I think that one thing that we've already done, we've done a good job of, and what we're doing here now is holding space for it, right? Holding space for these kind of conversations, and, sharing our experiences, right? For me, that had a big impact on my faith, having people who Rich and, the community here, many of you are very spiritually grounded, or, grounded in your search for spirituality and understanding. That community really helps. Sometimes it's just a feeling. and also leaving space for people to kind of explore on their own, that, maybe they're not where you are, but, I think ultimately, right, like faith is something that is important, but you have to come to it yourself, right? You can draw inspiration, but your faith has to be grounded in something, personal and unique to you. So it's going to be a community that supports you to get there, but we have to give people the autonomy to find it on their own, and the space and the time to do so.
That is so profound. Thank you, Nikki. I want to do something a little bit different. And we typically have a discussion at the end after we do the prayers and benedictions, but I would love for those in the room to jump in and ask your questions related to this discussion now, or even share your story in this hour. So let me open up the floor to others who have questions or comments for Nikki.
Hey everybody, it's Shalonda. It's good to be with you all. Nikiar, thank you so much for praying with me and just being who you are. You're a part of why I'm here. Just the connection with you, being able to experience your lineage and your, engagement with your culture and being mixed heritage has been really awesome for me. So thank you for sharing yourself with me and for being such an inspiration everywhere you go. Chicago is very fortunate.
You, Shalonda, that's so sweet. I feel the same way. You're such an important part of this community and such an inspiring person. So thank you. That means a lot.
Anybody else? Hi.
Is it someone else?
Yep, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Nikki's sister. Hi, it's so nice to meet you guys. It's so profound to hear Nikki's growth journey through these past few years that he's been connected to you, to your community, and it's so profound to hear him speak on it. And I'm just wanted to jump in to express gratitude that he has you guys, and also really that's mostly what I wanted to do, just express gratitude and also just like thank you for your wisdom, Nikki, and the profound things you're saying. So, yeah, love you too. Thank you guys, and send my love to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Cheryl says she can't speak, but she's so encouraged about this personal message of spiritual resilience. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Steve, I think you're on mute. There you are.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question about what you see as a difference between spiritual resilience and let's call it emotional resilience. People without faith, but are resilient nevertheless. The reason I bring this up is I've been, even though I've sort of moved towards having faith, most of my friends throughout my life have not been people of faith. And at the same time, many of them have displayed resilience, that they don't really see the universe as being a friendly place, but at the same time, they can take a blow. And I guess one of the reasons that I bring this up is I sort of feel like we should be trying to find common ground with people who don't have faith, rather than sort of giving the impression that, well, you've got to have faith in order to work with us, or something along those lines. You've got to have faith to be the kind of person that God wants us to be. And I really wonder if that's true. So I wish you would comment on that. Thanks.
Yeah, Steve, that's a great point. I mean, I think part of the reason why I was a little bit uncomfortable with church growing up was because my dad is not, he's not religious. He grew up in Iran during the Islamic Republic and the revolution, and so has a lot of negative kind of stigma with that, but also just with religion in general as a result. And he's one of the most resilient people I know. And I remember in church, like one of the churches that we went to was kind of like, well, if you don't believe in God, you don't have faith, then you're not going to heaven. And that really turned me off. And maybe caused some judgment of a lot of my own experience with Christianity, and made me tentative to be around it because of that experience. But yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, I think you can 100% have resilience, and the people without faith and the people who do that are incredible, and draw their strength and their source from something else. And maybe it just be love for the people and their family around them. So yeah, I don't think they're mutually exclusive at all. I think, spiritual resilience has been one tool that has been really helpful for me, but I think you can totally have resilience without faith. Faith in a higher power, faith in God.
Annabelle asks, Nikki, what is a good way to reach more people your age with a spiritual message?
Yeah, that's great. Great question. I'm probably the worst when it comes to social media and, the typical ways of reaching out and marketing. So I don't know, but in terms of message, I think the message that we are a place that, appreciates and welcomes dialogue on not necessarily just spiritual. I mean, spirituality encompasses so many things, right? And it has more than just to do with a belief in a higher power, I think, but also in a way that you kind of handle yourself and what you value in life. And so those topics are also crucial to the conversation of spirituality. So that we're a place that, is willing to, have those types of conversations. We're not going to push you towards any one specific direction. We'll share our thoughts, but we'll also listen to yours.
And Nikki, you may say you're not good, but on social media, but I posted your message on the power of community on social media, and it got like the highest number of hits among all other posts. So this goes to Steve's question exactly, how do we differentiate between spiritual resilience and emotional resilience, and can we reach across the divide and have this community even with our different sets of beliefs and experiences? And the answer is absolutely yes. I think your message speaks to that very well.
Thank you, Catalina. Appreciate that.
Anybody else? Maybe one last comment or question.
I have one. Thank you, Nick, for your interview. Very interesting, and I love your approach and the point you made about a friendly world. Some people, however, don't perceive the world to be friendly around them, or at least at some points in their lives. And you spoke a little bit to that already, what I'm going to ask, but what would you suggest them as step number one in this direction to make the world more friendly, or perceive the world as more friendly towards them?
It's a great question, and one that I have a hard time answering, because I think there are times in life where things are just not, that you lose hope, and things seem like there's not a solution, there's not a way out, and that it's, very bleak. And I think that's part of life as well. I think that maybe in those moments, it's looking for anything that does inspire you, that does cause wonder, and that does call that you do see, as loving or as beautiful, right? Those are the emotions I think I would, try to, even in the midst of despair, kind of take notice of those things. I don't think it's a overnight shift, or even that you get to one point and then you don't feel down or don't feel like the world is lost, another day. I think it's an ongoing path and an ongoing journey. But yeah, there is a lot of beauty in this world, even though there's a lot of darkness at times, or what can feel like darkness. So there will always be things to see beauty in.
If I may,
Thank you.
Nikki gave me advice sometime that was really useful, which was about like just feeling, like acknowledging and experiencing difficult feelings instead of trying to push them away towards something positive, and makes me think about, is it mutually exclusive for, well, I don't know, like the world to be benevolent, but not in the sense where nice things happen all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Like that there's purpose in ways that we don't understand. That doesn't diminish the pain that is there. It's very real. But a hope and a faith that maybe beyond that, there's some kind of underlying structure that is beautiful, that is happy. But it's not, that's the hardest part. Yeah, is getting to that, just believing in that.
Okay, thank you, and thank you to your sister.
Nikki, I see my family has asked you some of the toughest questions in this interview. I promise it wasn't intentional.
No, I always welcome good questions. It makes me think, yeah.
But thank you so much for this wonderful wisdom you're sharing. And if I may, I'll stop the recording now.